Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantir Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shanti Shadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shanti Raja Shanti Rashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shanti. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
Read on the breath of God on page 11 in your book. Consider the melody that's written in the points of the one that I played for you in this one.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Our subject today is 3 breathing exercises. This shouldn't be too difficult because breathing is something we have been doing right from the time we were born, and we hope to continue doing it for a long, long time. It's just that how to do something which we are already doing in a better way. But before I come to the exercises themselves, I think it's good to have a general context in which these exercises become meaningful. One of the central characteristics of Vedantic thinking is to see the larger picture. And sometimes we will see that as individuals, what makes one person different from another is the way we think. And some of us may be more interested in going to the particulars of everything, of how every little thing works. And some of us may not have patience for or interest in every little detail, but then we like to step back and take a larger picture of how all of this fits into a larger picture. And that was the principle behind which the great sages who first intuited the primary insights of the Vedanta philosophy, how they operated. Their minds did not dwell too much on the details or the particulars. They immediately wanted to see the larger picture, recognizing that behind all the particular ideas stands a very generalized abstract principle. And if you can grasp that general principle, then you have grasped everything. And that is why in the Vedas, one of the questions that gets asked pretty early in the Vedas is, well, here is the story. There is this one student who goes to a teacher and asks this question: what is that knowing which everything will become known? Now that's again going to the generalization. I think at some point this student may have realized that there is so much to know in this world that it's impossible for any of us in our lifetime to know each and everything. The universe is just too big and we are just too small. Our lifespans are too limited. And so this student goes and asks the teacher, is there anything knowing which I can know everything? And it's not something that we cannot totally identify with, because today we know that if you have a big house and many of us have to carry a lot of keys, then it might be much more convenient to have one master key which will open all the keys. Then it becomes so much more easier. Just carry one key. Or with computers controlling our lives, and we sign up in so many places, one big problem is how many passwords can you actually remember? And what most people end up doing is, well, just put the same password everywhere. And experts in the field say that's very risky. So there are now a lot of these password managers. 1Password, for instance, there's one app called 1Password, in which all you need to know is one password. And then that'll control all of your other passwords. So it's easy to imagine why this kind of question would be natural. Instead of knowing millions and trillions of things in this world, is there one thing that I can know by which everything will become known? So it is this kind of thinking in the Vedic times that led these people to question. And what they found was that everything that we observe in this universe can be resolved into one entity. And they call that entity Akasha, the space. So in the Rig Veda, which is the oldest available text in any literature, not just religious literature today, this is what it comes. In Sanskrit, it goes like this: Na sadasi, no sadasi, tadanim, etc. It goes on that way. And what it means is, when there was neither anything nor nothing, what existed then? And the Vedas say, Akasha existed without motion. And Akasha simply means space, existence itself. So then these people realized that if you can grasp Akasha, a person can grasp the whole universe, because that is the source from which everything comes. So what they did was resolving, it's like this. I mean, pretty much even modern science is tending towards it. Now, for instance, chemistry, you have some primary elements. Well, I don't know what the current number is, but it's something 100 plus something. And so the idea is that pretty much anything in this world can be reduced to these X number of elements. Similarly, we have now these various kinds of energy or forces. So we are trying, what science tries to do is tries to then, it's a generalization. You try to then reduce all available matter into some manageable categories. And Swami Vivekananda often pointed out, when will science, or even modern science as we understand it, can reach perfection? If we can reduce everything to just one, then you cannot go beyond that. And these Vedic sages did it. They reduced all of matter to this one entity called Akasha. And similarly, they found that all of the energy or all of the forces in this universe were reduced to one entity. And that entity they called prana. So the idea was this: once I'm able to grasp Akasha, I'll be able to grasp the whole universe. Once I'm able to control prana, I can control every force in this world. And by force is not meant simply the forces that are external. And clearly, there is a force of gravitation, there is electricity, magnetism, but also internal forces. The thought, thinking is an activity, the psychological forces within. Now, I don't think the modern science as we understand it is willing to categorize all forces at that level. I mean, clearly, we know about that all energy can be transformed into one into the other, the conversion of one energy into other. But that even our thinking, our mental feeling are also forces within. And so these thinkers then said all of these forces are a manifestation of that one primary force or energy, which they called prana. How do we know that if we can control this one force, this basic force of basic Akasha, we can have control of everything? To some extent, we can get a glimpse of it through the phenomenon of globalization. We know that how one activity in one part of the world can affect someone on the other side of the planet. And especially a powerful nation or a powerful corporation can control and manipulate forces that can have far-reaching effects. To some extent, we have an idea of how, when power is concentrated, when you have that control, you can then exercise that control not only within your own limited circle, but to a much, much wider area. Exactly in the same way, if a person can get this control over Akasha and over prana, this person can become virtually, nothing would be impossible for such a person. But that is what the goal before the yogis is, to control prana, to control Akasha. All of the healing practices really are a way of controlling prana, consciously or unconsciously. Illness can be seen. So there is prana externally manifesting as material forces. There is prana internally through all the movement and motion occurring within us. So if the flow of prana within our body is obstructed at some place, or it's not flowing smoothly at some place, that is the part of the body then that is going to give us trouble. And so what healing really does is to restore that natural flow of prana within the body. So think about it this way. If we then have control over prana, so let's say, as an example, say my shoulder is aching. It really means that the flow of prana within my body here it's not flowing well. There's some, as you can see, if there's some construction going on a road, the traffic doesn't flow smoothly. There's some problem there until the road is made all right. So maybe there's some kind of a construction going on, and the road must be cleared. So if I have control over prana, then all I need to do is to then use that power within me to restore that flow properly. So that's how self-healing can occur. And there is really no break. It's one continuous whole. And therefore, if I can control the prana within my body, there is no reason why I shouldn't be able to control prana in someone else's body. And that's how then one person can heal another. So there is really no limit to the power a person will have if that person is able to have control over one's prana. Great saints and prophets had this enormous control over prana, which is what gave them tremendous willpower. And it is this that gave them the power to sway the world. I mean, it's like this. If a person can raise one's prana to that high level, and with that powerful prana, that person can then influence person in front. And in some ways we can see that even in our own little lives. Why is it that sometimes when you are in the presence of a very cheerful, calm, peaceful personality, and then if you go in the presence of such a person, we have a tendency to kind of absorb a little bit of that joy, a little bit of that peace. There is something that is influencing me. Similarly, if you are in the presence of a very troubled person, and if your calmness is not strong enough to deal with that trouble, then that trouble may somehow seep into you. And that's how we are then told from our childhood, be in good company. Because again, company, we influence each other. It's all nothing but the play of prana, how the prana in one person can affect the prana in another. Now, the most obvious function of or manifestation of prana is the motion of our lungs. It's like this. If I have to control something, then I have to begin first by controlling that which is closest to me. If I can control something that is close to me, then I may be able to have some greater control over that which is more far away from me. And so the closest manifestation of prana to each of us is the movement of our lungs. And we know that because if the movement of my lungs stops, then all manifestations of the force in my body will stop. So that's what really is keeping me alive. So pranayama means controlling the movement of the lungs. And this movement of the lungs, this motion of the lungs, is associated with breath. So pranayama, we might think that we immediately think about controlling breath, and today we are speaking about breathing exercises. But what we are really doing is actually controlling prana. So it is not the breath that is producing the motion of the lungs. And that's very important to remember this. My breathing doesn't make my lungs move. On the contrary, it's the movement of the lungs that makes breathing possible. So it is prana which moves the lungs and which really produces that pumping action. And the movement of the lungs draws in the air. And so pranayama is not really controlling breath, but controlling that muscular power which really moves my lungs, which is possible for the activity of the lungs. So when the prana within me is controlled, all other prana in the body will gradually come under control. And that's how breathing becomes breathing is the most visible way prana manifests within me. So breathing itself shouldn't be identified as the total prana, but it's one manifestation of the prana within me. And which is why, therefore, breathing becomes an important practice. And as I've said in the beginning, we all have been breathing right from the time we were born. And what those who have studied this phenomenon of breathing scientifically or more deeply have discovered that the breathing patterns affect the way we think, the way we feel, the way we are able to either focus our mind or not focus it. So breathe, and it's almost like a little bit like a reverse engineering. What they did was to see, they somehow discovered the connection of breathing with our states of mind. So when we feel calm, when we feel focused, when we feel at peace, when we feel contented, there's one kind of a breathing pattern we have. When we are agitated, when we are angry, when we are upset, when we are angry, so at different feelings, different modes, and when we are disturbed, breathing pattern gets disturbed. And so if that observation, then you kind of go backward. Then you say, well, if this is how I breathe, this is how I'm seen to breathe when I'm peaceful and contented, then can I now consciously practice breathing that way so that it will produce the corresponding effect? So that's how it is. So it's not magic. It's simply observation that this feeling or this state of mind produces this kind of breathing. So let me now consciously create or produce that kind of breathing in order for me to attain the corresponding state of the mind. So rhythmic breathing, they have found, is a very powerful instrument that we already possess. It is said that the rhythmical breathing brings with it the tendency of the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. That's the little yogic language, so I don't know how exactly you would interpret it in terms of modern science. But what they say is the molecules of the body or some of these particles in the body tend to move in the same direction. When our will is consciously, and these are Vivekananda's words, when the will is consciously employed, the nerve currents change into a motion which is very similar to electricity. The whole body becomes a powerful battery of will. This then helps to rouse the dormant power and raise it to a higher plane of consciousness. This is the general principle. So we are not going to go into details today. Maybe at some point in future when we study Raja Yoga in a little bit more detail, we will be able to analyze this further. But today, just a very broad outline. So what the yogis have seen is that there are three primary channels along which all our inner movement occurs. And by inner movement, I mean the movement produced by our thinking, by our feelings, by our will. All the three basic functions of the mind: thinking, feeling, and willing. All these movements that these three functions produce occur along. There are three channels present within us, and there are names given in yoga for these three channels. One is called, and some of you may have been familiar with these names. One is called Ida, the other is called Pingala, and the third is called Sushumna. Now, these three channels, if you can kind of mentally visualize the figure 8 or two S's with a mirror image. Suppose that's how really what 8 is. And then imagine one straight line right through the center of it. Now that's more or less how these three channels are. So let's say Ida is one part of S, the real S. Pingala is the other S. And Sushumna is the central channel. Now what the yogis say is that in most of us, the central channel is almost closed. It's not been used at all. Or if at all, it's been used very little. Most of our thinking, feeling, and willing occurs along these side channels, Ida and Pingala. The goal of the yogi is that we have to open that central channel and have our inner activity occur through the central channel. Because only when the central channel opens, it's then that we are able to raise ourselves to higher planes of consciousness. And in yoga, they see how when our consciousness goes higher and higher and higher, when it reaches here, then the person attains samadhi. But in order for us to even start the journey, the first thing to do is to open the central channel. And that is the basic principle about breathing, that how I can use my breath to open the central channel. And that is why sometimes, and as we will see now, how these exercises really deal with that. So now, with this fairly lengthy background, let's look at the 3 exercises. So I thought it best to read a little bit. These 3 exercises are found, I haven't invented them, so you are safe. These 3 exercises are given by Swami Vivekananda himself in his book on Raja Yoga. And so I will read out to you exactly what he says. It's very helpful, very practical. So describing the first exercise, he calls it the lesson. The first lesson is just to breathe in a measured way, in a natural way, in and out. That will harmonize the system. When you have practiced this for some time, you will do well to join to it the repetition of some word as Om or any other sacred word. In India, we use certain symbolical words instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4. That is why I advise you to join the mental repetition of the Om or some sacred word. Let the word flow in and out with the breath, rhythmically, harmoniously, and you will find the whole body is becoming rhythmic. Then you will learn what rest is. Compared with it, sleep is not rest. Once this rest comes, the most tired nerves will be calmed down, and you will find that you have never been really rested. So only when we experience that rest that can come, we suddenly realize, oh, this is real rest. What I thought of as rest before was not really rest. And then Swamiji gives the effect of this practice. The first effect of this practice is perceived in the change of expression on one's face. Harsh lines disappear. With calm thought, calmness comes over the face. Next comes beautiful voice. I never saw a yogi with a croaking voice. These signs come after a few months' practice. After practicing the above-mentioned breathing for a few days, you should take up the next one. So this is the first practice. Simple, not complicated at all, that what we have already been doing naturally, to do it at least occasionally in a very conscious way. And while we do it, you're not, at this first exercise, you're not controlling anything. You are just being conscious of your breath. And while you are breathing in, just associate it with some sacred word or a sacred name. Or in Vedanta, the most sacred sound symbol is used as Om. So just paying attention as you breathe in. You can see some of the Buddhist teachers, they speak about mindful breathing. It's nothing but this first lesson, the first practice that is there in the yoga tradition of just being conscious of one's breath, and in order to do it consciously with intention, with a specific intention, it's helpful to associate it with a sacred sound. So why don't we just do it for about, say, 1 minute right now? So since it's easy to get distracted if your eyes are open, if you wish, just sit straight. That's important. As far as possible, not just when you are meditating. If you can make it like your default posture, wherever you're sitting at home, at your workplace, try to sit straight. By straight, I mean not rigid. You can be completely at ease, be relaxed, but try to keep the head, the shoulders, and the hips in a straight line. That's the best posture, really, to have the mind focused. And if you can kind of make it a habit, conscious habit, gradually then that will become the natural posture for you. So let's try to sit straight and say about a minute or so. Let us practice this way. Let us just focus our attention on our breathing. And as we are breathing in, mentally you just say Om or some sacred sound. And then as you breathe out, just say Om again. Let's do it for a while. And while you are breathing, don't think of anything. Just look at your breath and repeat Om. Om. This is a very, very, very helpful practice, and something that can be done anywhere, even if you are busy doing something and you just want to take a moment's respite. It might be just good, just wherever you're sitting, you don't have to move anything, and just bring your attention to your breath. Just breathe consciously for a while and then resume work again. Just yesterday I was reading one piece and which said that nearly 70% or probably more of the people who work with their computers, and now really, computers really doesn't simply mean sitting at your desk with mobile devices, whether it's your smartphone or the tablet. We are really staring at a shining surface just too long. And so they said more than 70% of the people who use these devices do suffer this problem with the eye. It could be the redness and the pain and so on, or just exhaustion. And so they normally advise, of course, the kind of thing many of you would have read already, try to blink more often and look someplace else rather than continuously looking at the screen and so on. But this is something you could do. They said about more than 20 minutes at a stretch is not really good. In a long term, it can affect our eyes. Now, every 20 minutes, it's not very practicable to just kind of leave your desk and go someplace. Well, you could be just sitting where you're sitting, and every 20 minutes or so, you could just close your eyes, just breathe consciously a little bit, and then resume again. Especially when we are disturbed about something, or confused, or have to take some important decision, it's always helpful to just first of all calm ourselves down, breathe. It's really very, very practical, very helpful also. So this is the first exercise. And Swamiji says we must practice this for a few days before taking up the next one. So this is really, if we have never practiced this kind of conscious breathing before, then it's good to practice this first exercise before we even attempt the next one. So this is how Swamiji then described the second exercise. So listen to it carefully. Slowly fill the lungs with breath through the Ida, that's the left nostril, and at the same time concentrate the mind on the nerve current. You are, as it were, sending the nerve current down the spinal column. So just it's a visualization that you are sending the nerve current down and then almost striking the dormant power. Often that power gets symbolically represented. It's called Kundalini. But don't imagine there is really some serpent within you waiting somewhere. That's only a very symbolical language. But the idea is to breathe through the left nostril, visualize that you're just kind of going deep down and just at the striking at the head of that dormant power within, kind of almost rousing it. Hold the current there for some time. So here now, in the first exercise, we were breathing naturally. In the second one, we breathe in and then hold the breath inside for a while after striking at the dormant power. And then gradually, so we breathe in through the left nostril, hold the breath down, and breathe out through the right nostril. The easiest way is to stop the right nostrils. Of course, ideally speaking, we know, if both nostrils are open, try breathing only with one nostril. You won't be able to do it. So clearly, we'll have to close one nostril. Sometimes you might have noticed, as a part of the puja that we have, you might find me closing nostrils. So this is a part of the daily puja ritual as well. The idea is, again, it will help the one who is doing worship to focus the mind on the activity. And really you can close the nostril whichever way you want, but traditionally what they do is that, so you put down your index finger and the middle finger this way, and the ring finger and the little finger stands up, and the thumb. So if I'm breathing in through my left nostril, then I close the right nostril with my thumb like this. You breathe in, then you close both, you hold the breath down, then you open this, and you breathe out through the right nostril. And then the second one, again, you breathe through the right, just do the reverse. Hold the breath down and breathe out through the left. So then it becomes one cycle. You breathe in through one, breathe out through the other, then you breathe in through the other, and breathe in through the one. And then there is a certain proportion, order in which it is done. And what Swami Vivekananda recommends is, he says, draw in for 4 seconds, hold in for 16, and throw out in 8. So this is how it normally is. 1:4:2. So if you can either repeat it, if you want just numbers, or use Om. So when you breathe in, breathe in the 4 counts of Om, or 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe in. When you're holding the breath down inside for 16. So 4, then again count 16. And then when you're breathing out through the other nostril, breathe out 8 times. So 4, 16, 8. Then you again go in the reverse way, 4, 16, 8. So that's the proportion that is recommended. And the third exercise is just a slight variation on the second. So in the second one, we breathe in through the left. Oh, you want to give it a try once? Okay, that'll be great. So remember, 4, 16, 8. And it's best that you count the number yourself. I don't want to do the counting for you, because all of us may have different duration of breathing. So don't overstrain yourself. So just do it in a way that comes very naturally to you. So breathe in 4 counts, hold in 16, breathe out 8. So let's do it once to the left nostril and once to the right nostril. There's one trick. I probably should have mentioned it before. Keeping count of 4 is rather easy, but 16 might be a little difficult. And so if you're using a right hand to do this closing and opening, with your left hand, so a simple way, an easy way is to, since we count this way with your thumb. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So begin the tip of the finger, then the next line at the bottom. So that's really 4. So each finger kiss we have four lines. So when you're breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're holding it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. When you're breathing out again, just 2 fingers. So 4, 16, 8, it becomes a little bit easier. So otherwise, if you're thinking more about numbers, then you will have nothing else to think about. So this is one easy thing. And the third one is a slight variation, which Swamiji says the third exercise is you breathe in through the left, breathe out through the right. Now, this third exercise, instead of first we held the breath when it was inside, the third exercise, you hold the breath when it is outside. So you breathe in through the left, 4, breathe out through the right, 8. Don't take the next breath until you count 16. Then you take 4, 8, 16 outside. 4, 8, 16 outside. So in the second exercise, you do the 16 count inside when you're holding the breath inside. In the third exercise, you're holding the breath outside for 16. Now, no, you can practice this later on. No need to do that right now. Let me read to you what Swami Vivekananda says are the benefits of this practice. And this is important. Of the 3 processes for the purification of the nerves, so these 3 in Sanskrit, this is called Nadi Shuddhi. Nadi means nerves. So purifying our nerves is done through this. Keep in mind, we are calling it breathing exercises. Apparently you are controlling breath, but really what you're trying to do is controlling prana, of which breath is only a manifestation. So what is the advantage of this? So Swami Vivekananda says, of the 3 processes for the purification of the nerves described here, the first and the last are neither difficult nor dangerous. So the first exercise, regular rhythmic breathing associated with Om, do it in your natural way. And a third one where you hold the breath outside, not inside. So these are relatively easy and not dangerous. Now what kind of danger is there? The more you practice the first one, the calmer you will be. So if you find any among your friends or family, someone is not being very calm, you can share this exercise with them and tell them breathe properly. Just think of Om, and you can practice even while you're sitting at your work. You will be all the better for it. Someday, if you practice hard, the Kundalini will be roused. For those who practice once or twice a day, just a little calmness of the body and mind will come, and beautiful voice. our singing will improve even more if all of you do this regularly. Actually, a lot of these professional singers, they really have to have a great control over their muscles and breathing. Only for those who can go on further with it will Kundalini be aroused, and the whole of nature will begin to change, and the book of knowledge will open. No more will you need to go to books for knowledge. Your own mind will have become your book, containing infinite knowledge. So a lot can come. So what I would recommend, and something that Swamiji recommends, is that at present, don't worry about the second exercise. Don't about holding the breath inside. The danger that Swamiji refers to here is that this is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful instrument, and powered should be used with responsibility, and it can be done with only one who is fit for it. In a very general sense, I mean, there's this so much debate that it's been going on now for quite a long time about gun control. Holding a gun is a powerful instrument. If it is in the hand of someone who is responsible, who knows how to use it, who knows when to use it, it can do wonderful things. It can be very helpful. But if it is in the hand of a person who is not responsible, who doesn't know how to use it, who doesn't know when to use it, it can be very dangerous. And we have seen both the sides of having a powerful instrument like that in our hands. Now, breathing is like that. It's a very powerful instrument. We can see that. I mean, it's like a knife. You give in a knife in the hand of a deranged person, that person can take someone's life. A knife in the hand of a skillful surgeon can save someone's life. So breathing, and just imagine, again, we're just talking about prana, a force which is the basic force of entire thing in the universe. A yogi who has control over prana can control even the sun and the moon, it is said. So this is a tremendously powerful instrument. And therefore, we also need, so this is not some kind of a magic. This is not some kind of a mumbo jumbo, you can do this and you become powerful. No. So this has to be used responsibly. And that is why all of these yogic practices go with the provision that is based on a strong ethical and moral foundation. The person who is responsible, who is moral, should go ahead. Because if not, then they can be very dangerous. It can be dangerous to the person who is practicing it, and of course it can be dangerous to others if this person somehow is able to get control of this prana. And there have been people, because once power comes in hand, and if people are not responsible, they can use it in a very destructive way. So that's the note of caution, and that's why Swamiji uses the word dangerous. And therefore, let's begin with something which is simple, which is safe. And a good way to begin that is just with the first exercise. Do it not simply for a few days. I would advise that do it for a few weeks or a few months, and then practice the third one. And even the third one, don't overdo it. The safest is do it 4 times in the morning, 4 times in the evening, before you do your regular prayer or meditation. Not more than that. Swami Brahmanandaji, a great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, used to say that all of the benefits that can come through this kind of exercises can come naturally through just sincere devotion to God, a sincere surrender at the feet of divine. And so if I'm truly dedicated to my spiritual ideal, if I truly love God, then my love for that ideal, my love for God will automatically make my breath rhythmic, will automatically make the flow of prana within me very, very smooth. So do not for any time imagine that this is the breathing in these manners is the only method of calming down. Certainly not. This is one of the ways of doing it. It's a helpful way of doing it, provided we do it intelligently and we do it under a safe guidance. We don't just say, oh, this is great. Well, let me just tell you one story, and then I conclude. And this happened many years ago, when I was a novice in India. I had just joined the monastery. I was in a monastery for a couple of years. When I was in our monastery there, and then one gentleman came one morning. And he was a Catholic. He said that he had been practicing this breath control for, he said he had been doing it for 15 or 20 years. And I asked him, I said, so that's great, but what's the problem? And he said, then he narrated something. He said that what he had been doing, and he had not received any guidance from anyone. He was just reading it from the books and doing it. And so he said, I began doing it for a short time, then I started enjoying it so much, so I would just close all the doors and windows of my room and sit for like 2 hours, 3 hours, just breathing and doing all these very advanced practices. And then he said one day he suddenly found I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just telling you one example. So he said he just found his right shoulder was very heavy. And then he looked up and he saw, he said he saw some divine figure sitting there. And he said, I was terrified. He said, I was perspiring. I didn't know what to do. I was confused. And then he said, he just came out. And then he said, now I'm afraid to do this because suddenly all these bizarre things are happening. And then he was asking me, what shall I do? And what I told him was simply this. I said that if it is a genuine spiritual experience, first of all, it shouldn't frighten you. It shouldn't confuse you. It shouldn't be something that put fear in your heart. So the fact that you are confused, etc., shows that there's something not right with the way you're doing it, and he then said, I had not received any guidance. So I just mentioned this to show not that this is you need to be afraid of this, but that if we don't do it in a proper way, then we might kind of start hallucinating or imagining all this. That's only if you do it 2 or 3 hours, which I don't think many of us don't even have time to do that. So you are safe about that. Which is not to say this is, so it shows first of all that some things do change within. But if we do it properly, it can be tremendously helpful. So the advantage that we have is that we have the guidance of great souls like Vivekananda, and then of course he learned it from his teacher, Sri Ramakrishna. So if we follow the instructions of these very dependable, authentic sources, then we are on a safe track. And as Swamiji points out here, the first one, when you breathe naturally and associate it, breathe consciously, that's completely safe. And the third one, when you keep the breath out, that's also, there is no risk. So I would strongly advise that although all these 3 exercises are mentioned in Swamiji's book, for the time being, don't worry about the second one. Just do the first for a few months, and then if you feel encouraged, you are able to see some benefit, and then you can do the third one, but that also only a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening. The first practice of breathing naturally and consciously, you can do anytime, all the time, if possible. Because the more you do, the more benefit you will find, and that's completely a safe practice. So these are the things I wanted to share with you. I particularly mentioned this because about a couple of months ago, there's one gentleman from Europe who was reading Vivekananda's yoga and who follows our regular podcasts. So he wrote to me about these exercises and wanted to know how we should do it or what I should do. And then I thought this might be something very helpful to share with everyone here as well. So you remember that even at every satsang in the beginning, when we have the short meditation, and so that time we also bring our attention to the mind, and then we breathe in and out. So that is the time also you can then, now that you have the words of Swamiji again, we are all reminded of what Swamiji said. That might be the time also to then breathe consciously and then repeat some sacred syllable or Om along with it. So give it a try, and then as with anything in Vedanta and yoga, don't do something with just blindly. Just give it a try. If it works for you, if you see the benefit, then stick with it. If you don't find any benefit, there are always many other ways to do it. So this is not the only way. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. Our subject next Sunday will be spiritualizing daily life. On Wednesday, we will continue our study group in studying the Gita. Currently, we're doing the 3rd chapter. That will be at 7:30. And on Tuesday and Saturday, we will have the Arati and meditation as usual. We'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being become manifest unto us. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May the Divine bless us all and fill our hearts with infinite grace and love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.